Mình sẽ có một ngày cũng khá là dài, tuy nhiên nó cũng khá là thú vị. Chương trình nó sẽ chia thành 7 module. Lúc đầu mình sẽ có 2 module cơ bản. Mình sẽ có module giới thiệu về Google Cloud, trả lời câu hỏi đơn giản nhất, Google Cloud là gì, đã phát triển như thế nào, kể cả toàn cầu, tại châu Á, tại Đông Nam Á và tại riêng Việt Nam, những khách hàng của Việt Nam sử dụng Google Cloud là ai và họ sử dụng trong mục tiêu gì. Sau đó mình sẽ ăn trưa. Các bạn không cần phải đi đâu cả, mình sẽ phục vụ ăn trưa tại chỗ cho tất cả mọi người ở đây. Mình sẽ có lunchbox, vậy thì các bạn không cần phải đi đâu,
chỉ là xíu thôi,
yên tâm. Sau đó mình sẽ có những session theo đánh giá của mình thú vị hơn nữa vào buổi chiều, thì mình sẽ đi sâu hơn vào những đề tài như là container. Nếu mọi người chưa nghe cái từ Kubernetes thì các bạn sẽ nghe cái từ đó khá là nhiều trong buổi chiều. Rồi cuối cùng thì mình sẽ kết thúc với session mà theo suy nghĩ của mình là session thú vị nhất, và đó là session về Big Data, Machine Learning, trí tuệ nhân tạo. Và mong rằng các bạn cũng có thể ở lại đến cuối để đón nhận session cuối cùng. Hôm nay mình sẽ có tận 5 Googler, những người đang làm cho Google, và trong công ty mình gọi là Googler. Mình sẽ có 5 Googler lên sân khấu. Đầu tiên là tôi, sau đó thì mình sẽ có anh Tim đứng đầu khu vực Đông Nam Á, phụ trách Google Cloud. Sau đó thì mình sẽ có Franco cũng là một gương mặt thân quen với khá là nhiều bạn ở đây, nhất là những người trong cộng đồng gaming. Sau đó mình sẽ có thầy giáo của Google, như là sư phụ của Google, Theo phụ trách đào tạo là GCP Certified Instructor. Rồi cuối cùng mình sẽ có Danny Mac là engineer, hiểu rất là sâu về machine learning, trí tuệ nhân tạo, deep learning, vân vân. Quan trọng không kém là partner của Google. Tôi xin phép bắt đầu với Genesis. Thì không biết là anh Quốc, chị Mai ở đâu ạ? Dạ, ok, hi. Genesis là partner đầu tiên của Google Cloud tại Việt Nam. Mình bắt đầu hợp tác với Google từ năm 2011. Lúc đó thì mình chưa có Google Cloud, hồi đó là Google for Work. Team của Genesis đã có hơn 1.000 khách hàng enterprise sử dụng G Suite của Google. Họ đây rất là nhiệt tình sử dụng những chức năng khác của Google Cloud. Vậy thì nếu các bạn quan tâm đến enterprise thì anh Quốc và chị Mai rất là sẵn sàng tư vấn. Bên cạnh hai anh chị thì mình có Mario và Thái, cả hai bạn mặc áo màu xanh từ GoPomelo. GoPomelo là partner mạnh nhất của Google Cloud ở bên Thái Lan. Họ mới mở văn phòng tại Việt Nam và họ rất là sẵn sàng bằng kinh nghiệm có từ bên Thái Lan. Có khá nhiều dự án thú vị, trong đó cũng có dự án về nông nghiệp, cách mình sử dụng cloud cho nông nghiệp, và Việt Nam cũng là một đất nước về nông nghiệp thì mình cũng có cái hỏi kinh nghiệm của họ về đề tài đó. Rồi cuối cùng là Cloud Ace, mình có Honda San và Tuyên. Cloud Ace là partner mạnh nhất của Google Cloud ở bên Nhật Bản, và họ có khá nhiều kinh nghiệm trong lĩnh vực gaming và app development. Vậy thì nếu bạn là app developer thì bạn có thể nói chuyện với Tuyên với lại Honda San để xem kinh nghiệm của họ có thể giúp mình như thế nào. Bên cạnh đó mình cũng có 2 booth, 2 gian hàng ở ngoài của Google. Mình có một booth của Google Startup, đó là team của Google hỗ trợ các bạn startup khi mình mới bắt đầu sử dụng cloud, để mình thứ nhất là mình hiểu thêm về những chức năng của Google, và thứ hai làm sao để mình có startup credit, và họ sẽ chia sẻ một chút về cái đó. Và mình có booth của Google là chung tất cả những câu hỏi bạn có về Google Cloud thì bạn có thể hỏi bạn đó. Một số thông tin quan trọng về certificate, nếu mà bạn ở lại đến cuối ngày thì bạn sẽ nhận được một chứng chỉ về Google Cloud. Hơn nữa thì nếu mà bạn điền xong mình sẽ có một cái feedback form, thì nếu mà bạn đánh giá về sự kiện và nộp cái form đó thì bạn sẽ nhận được một cái áo thun của Google Cloud, kể cả bạn đánh giá như thế nào vẫn nhận được áo thun, yên tâm. Trừ trường hợp là đánh giá không tốt về MC đó thì vẫn nhận được hết. Và mình có một Facebook group mới toanh, thì đó là Google Cloud VN, thì nó là Facebook group, và trong đó mình sẽ giới thiệu tất cả sự kiện của Google, group official, những update mới nhất của Google. Thì nếu mà bạn muốn xin vào group đó, tất cả những người xin vào trong ngày hôm nay thì mình sẽ accept hết, và mình chỉ cần tìm kiếm Google Cloud VN thì nó sẽ ra cái group đó. Thì bạn chỉ cần rút điện thoại ra tìm Google Cloud VN và có một cái nút là xin vào cái group đó. Rồi bắt đầu sự kiện thì tôi rất là vui hân hạnh để giới thiệu team là leader của Google Cloud tại khu vực Đông Nam Á. Team cũng là một người đã từng đến Việt Nam. Vừa rồi team chia sẻ với tôi là cách đây khoảng 15 năm team và vợ đến Việt Nam. Hai người đã dành 2 tháng cho Việt Nam để đi phượt, Tiềm Năng Gia Bác mà dành rất nhiều thời gian ở miền Trung. Cũng hỏi Tim là thành phố nào Tim thích nhất, quý nhất, và Tim trả lời là nơi mà nhận được nhiều tình cảm nhất của mình và vợ của mình chính là thành phố Huế. Thì nếu mà có bạn ở đây là ở Huế thì có thể sau này mình xin sự hỗ trợ đặc biệt từ phía Tim. Yeah, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome the head of Google Cloud Southeast Asia to the stage, Tim Simon.
Thank you, Joe. Now, just my luck. I'm the North American who doesn't speak Vietnamese, so I have to follow this guy, which I'll do my best. But we have a tradition for our Google Cloud OnBoard events. We all have to take a selfie. So I'm going to ask everyone to show your enthusiasm. So we're going to count down to 3. And Joe, maybe you might want to count down in Vietnamese for us, right? So on the count of 3, I would like all of you to show your enthusiasm for today, right? So we'll take a selfie.
Vậy thì 1, 2, 3 và mình sẽ chụp selfie. Và một thông tin rất quan trọng, khi mà mình đã chụp selfie xong rồi thì các bạn thấy mình có cái bộ tai nghe. Khi mà Tim và mọi người chia sẻ, họ sẽ chia sẻ bằng tiếng Anh, nhưng mà mình có phiên dịch trực tiếp tiếng Việt thì bạn chỉ cần dùng cái bộ tai nghe của mình để nghe được. Ok, mọi người sẵn sàng chưa? Ok, mọi người rút điện thoại ra giúp mình nhé.
Con bận rồi.
Ok, điện thoại của Tim. Ok, cool.
Okay, give us the countdown.
Ok, everybody, yeah. 1, 2, 3. Ok, xong rồi. Trở thành nổi tiếng tại văn phòng của Google. Rất là cảm ơn. And over to you, Tim.
Thank you. Well, maybe that was less exciting than anticipated. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I have the privilege of leading our Google Cloud business for Southeast Asia. It's exciting to be back in Ho Chi Minh. I have a very special place in my heart for Vietnam. I spent my honeymoon here in Ho Chi Minh many years ago, and it was terrific. It was a lot of fun. So what I'd like to do is take the next 15 to 20 minutes to give you an orientation on our Google Cloud platform. So I'll introduce some of the concepts that you'll be learning about later today. And I'll also give you some examples of what some of our customers are doing, but really try to impress upon all of you why we're so excited about this business. All of us at Google. And I think a good place to start is with this. A good place to start is with our mission. So Google's mission is to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. Now this is the mission that we set upon ourselves 20 years ago when Google was formed. And along the way, we have created these consumer products that all of you hopefully use every day. So we have these 7 products that service over 1 billion users. These are cloud products based on that mission. Now, typically, when we talk about Google, this is what a lot of people think of, right? They'll think of this very elegant, very simple search platform that we have. But when we see that search bar, we particularly, my Google Cloud colleagues, this is what we think of. We think of all of the infrastructure that supports, those 7 billion user products and our search product. Now that's a picture of an actual Google Cloud data center. And it's only by investing in this infrastructure that we were able to create, these web scalable, globally distributed services that we have. Now I want to come back to that mission statement for a minute because it's really important to organize the world's information and make it useful and accessible. That's a really bold statement that underpins all of our product philosophy and how we build and take products out to market. But it's a really hard thing to do when you want to index the World Wide Web. And you want to do that multiple times a day, and you want to make that available via the search platform. So you have to think of compute very different that Google Cloud leverages. We leverage the same infrastructure that supports the other Google products. And if you ask me, the real superstar, the real hero, if you will, of Google Cloud in particular is the Google network. It's phenomenal. This is the secret sauce for us, if you will. You're going to hear a little bit more about our Google Cloud Network. But our Google network, it's the largest global private network. We have hundreds of thousands of fiber connectivity globally. We have thousands of edge locations, hundreds of points of presence in virtually every part of the world. We have submarine cables. We are continuously investing in this high-performance network in order to kind of manage traffic globally. So Google Cloud is a global service. So it's not specific to a particular country. It's not specific to a particular data center or a region. It's a global cloud. And it's interconnected through this very powerful network, this secure network, this highly resistant and resilient and performing, highly performant network. And again, you'll hear a little bit more about that. Now at this point, you're probably asking yourself, Tim, that's great. You've got a lot of infrastructure. You've got this global network. It's wonderful. You've got billion user products, but you might not be interested in building, the next Gmail service. You might not be interested in building the next YouTube service. You might be a bank, or you might be a gaming company. I know there are a lot of gaming companies in Vietnam, as an example. You might be a logistics or a manufacturer. What does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my business? But if you take a step back, away from the specifics, I think some of the challenges that Google experienced when we were scaling our business over the last 19 to 20 years are not dissimilar to some of the challenges that you might be faced with when you're building and scaling your own products in your own businesses. So what are some of those challenges? Some of them are here. Everyone talks about being data-driven, right? So data is really core to Google and how we operate as an organization. We also, as we scaled our business, we also were challenged with connecting different teams. We have product engineering, product teams. We had software engineering teams, and they weren't necessarily collaborating as great as they could have been doing. And then along the way, as we scaled, of course, we needed to provide this infrastructure in a very agile manner, which was very secure. So we needed to protect from security threats. So these are some of the challenges that, regardless of the size of company or the industry, that we were faced with. And what we've done was externalize a lot of what we've run internally. And we've capitalized on, again, the 20 years of investing in our infrastructure, through our Google Cloud Platform. And if you ask me, quite simply, when people ask me, what is Google Cloud Platform? For me, it's a cloud platform that allows you to overcome some problems and challenges that you have by leveraging on Google's innovation. That's really what we're trying to do with Google Cloud. Now, I spend a lot of time across Southeast Asia, as you can imagine, with organizations of all sizes. So I get a chance, I'm privileged to be able to talk to several business leaders, and they really highlight 5 things, or 5 reasons why they use Google Cloud. So I talked a little bit about our network, but I want to highlight 4 other ones as well, 4 other reasons for you. The first one is the openness of our platform. We are absolutely committed to having the most open cloud platform in the market. When we say that we're an open platform, we really mean it. So if you're familiar with containers as an example, so Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a Google technology for managing containers. We've open sourced that. TensorFlow. You'll be learning a little bit more about TensorFlow later today from a machine learning perspective. That was another Google technology. We've open sourced that. The work that we're doing with Apache Beam for managing data and data pipelines, Spinnaker and so forth. I mean, we fundamentally believe that developers should not be constrained by legacy application stacks or infrastructure stacks for that matter. Developers should be able to develop applications and services regardless of the cloud and regardless of compute style. So openness is one. The second reason is artificial intelligence. Right? We're really known for working with organizations and helping them overcome some of their challenges around data and how you're applying machine learning to accelerate insights against that data. So at Google, we're trying to hire the best talent on the market across our deep minds teams our Google and our Google Cloud platform, our Google Cloud machine learning platform.
Right.
We'd like to talk a little bit. We'd like to talk about how we're trying to democratize machine learning. And what that really means is, understanding that not every organization has data scientists. I met the data scientist earlier today, a very talented gentleman who's doing some really cool stuff with genomics. But still, that is more of an edge case, if you will. Most of the organizations that we deal with are still, learning and increasing their capacity and capabilities around data science. So what we're doing is taking some of that innovation that Google has built over years and externalizing that via APIs, machine learning APIs. You'll learn more about those later today, but some of you might be familiar with our Vision API, our Translate API, our Speech API, and so forth. So machine learning and artificial intelligence is another reason why companies are leveraging Google Cloud. Security. Security is fundamental to everything that we do at Google, as you can imagine. We increase organization security posture, when they run on Google Cloud. So just to give you an idea of how important security is for Google, every minute we block 10 million spam email messages. We index over 700,000 web pages for kind of malicious activity. We block around 10,000 deceitful URLs and executables to keep businesses safe, to keep consumers safe. That's what happens across Google. So we need to have the most secure cloud on the planet. It's a full-time job. We're proud of the fact that we've been successful to date. We've been able to keep our customers out of the news, and we won't stop. Another example, which you might be familiar with, is the recent CPU vulnerabilities with Meltdown Inspector. So within Google Cloud, we were able to patch globally all of our servers, to protect our customers, from those two attacks. And that didn't result in any performance degradation. Right? So we leverage a function in Google Cloud called live migration that doesn't require customers to give us an operational maintenance window and kind of take their applications offline. We did that, our customers didn't even know it, and it didn't even degrade their performance. So security is an absolute critical part of our Google Cloud story and why customers are running with us. And then lastly, it's how we partner. How we work with customers, regardless of the size of customer. We hear this time and time again, that we partner differently. And I know this, a lot of us came from a different cloud platform provider in the past, and we have a different philosophy and a different approach whenever we engage. So we have a very talented engineering organization within Google Cloud. Some of them are here today. We have a function called customer engineering. So these work with organizations to help them kind of architect outcomes on Google Cloud. We have specialist CEs, we call them customer engineers, focused on data, security, networking, machine learning, and so forth. But we've also extended that with a new profession that we have created, which is called customer reliability engineering. Now, are you familiar with site reliability engineering? Is that a concept that's familiar? So, site reliability engineering is, again, something that Google introduced in order to manage infrastructure at scale. And effectively what site reliability engineering does, or endeavors to do, is take some concepts from software development, and effectively apply those concepts to how you manage infrastructure at scale. So we've taken some of those CRE findings, and we've applied those to this new profession called customer reliability engineering. It's really important because we want to share the faith. We want to share your success when you're running in Google Cloud. So a simple example, when organizations who leverage a CRE working with us, if something goes wrong and your pager goes off, our pager goes off at the same time. So we're really changing the dynamic of how we support our customers. So that it's really important for you to have when you're running in a cloud platform, and know that, as the gentleman in in one of the videos described that you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? This is really important for us to ensure that you ensure safe passage to the cloud, but also your success. Now, another more practical reason why people are leveraging our cloud is because of our economic model, right? And this resonates in every country in Southeast Asia. So we have pioneered certain aspects of how we provide our cloud platform. So we have what is called sustained use discounts. So what a sustained use count does is reward you for running on our cloud platform. So you don't have to sign a contract, you don't have to make a down payment, you don't have to make some sort of a long-term commitments, which you do with some other clouds. A sustained use discount will apply a discount to your running virtual machines on the subsequent month based on your usage, regardless of company size. Secondly, we pioneer what is called custom machine images. So for example, if your application requires one CPU and maybe 1.5 gigs of RAM, you should be able to assemble that. That saves you money. You don't want to over-provision by selecting some off-the-shelf virtual machine. So we have organizations that are leveraging custom machine images at scale. I have one customer, for example, in Indonesia that has deployed over 10,000 custom machine images. So they've in a very detailed manner, granular way, they've matched the application performance and requirements to the underlying infrastructure. We've also pioneered per-minute billing. We're not the only ones that do that now, but together these are some of the reasons why organizations are leveraging us without sacrificing performance. So this is really important for me to stress. This is available to everyone, a single developer, a large multinational organization. Now, I'll take us just a couple of minutes to give you an overview of the full Google Cloud portfolio. We're going to be focusing on our Google Cloud platform today. Right? So our Google Cloud platform includes our infrastructure as a service platform. That's our core compute, storage, database, networking services. Beyond that, we have our data and machine learning services, which we'll touch upon today. And then lastly, we have, from a Google Cloud platform perspective, our platform as a service layer. So this is where you can develop applications and it'll be fully managed by us. On top of that, we have a set of other capabilities which allow you to connect various business systems. So we have our Apigee business, which is our API management business, and Orbitera and our Google Maps business. So those three capabilities allow you to create some pretty rich digital ecosystems. And then finally, we have our Teams mobility and device business, our hardware business. So G Suite, as an example, for broader collaboration across your organization, with your customers, with your customers' customers. We've got our Chrome business and then our Android business as well. So that's the end-to-end stack, and we're going to be focusing on our Google Cloud platform today. Now, in the last 6 months alone, our product engineers have been really focused on improving our Google Cloud platform. And that's based on feedback that we receive from our customers and from our partners. So in the last 6 months alone, our engineering organization has released, or they've shipped about over 500 releases. And we will continue to provide organizations with the businesses and tools that they need to do their jobs better. So I'd like to highlight 3 of those relatively new services that we've released in the last 6 to 9 months. So the first one is Cloud Spanner. Right, so those of you who understand some of the intricacies of databases, Cloud Spanner is a new database, relatively new database service. So Cloud Spanner is the world's first horizontally scalable, strongly consistent relational database. Typically, relational databases scale this way. They'll scale vertically, but it's very challenging to scale horizontally. And what Cloud Spanner endeavors to do is achieve both of those objectives. It's a relatively new service for our customers, but it's technology that has been supporting a big chunk of Google for the last 6 years. So Cloud Spanner is one. That allows you to start to develop applications in a slightly different way. Secondly, it's dialogue flow. Now, we're seeing a lot of interest in these conversational applications across Southeast Asia, and that's what dialogue flow does. So dialogue flow allows you to create these very rich conversational applications and chatbots, and that leverages a lot of the machine learning capability and knowledge that we have. So I talked a little bit before about how we're trying to democratize artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's one of the ways that we're doing it. And then another new service, which is a couple of months old right now, it's still in beta, is Cloud Auto ML. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be talking about Cloud Auto ML today, but that is another machine learning service where you might have your own data, but you don't have the knowledge in your organization to build a model, to build your machine learning algorithm. And that's what Cloud Auto ML endeavors to do. So we're going to be releasing a series of Cloud Auto ML solutions. The first one is Auto ML Image. So if you've got a bunch of stock images, for example, and you want to create some sort of an application that will leverage your image data, you could use Auto ML. So that will do things such as image classification, the taxonomy, tagging, and so forth. Right, so we'll continue to provide businesses with some of these tools to simplify, how you're running on our platform. And the feedback that we received, customers across Southeast Asia, quite honestly, they're migrating or launching natively onto our platform quite extensively, quite fast. So we've watched as global and regional startups that have been powered by Google Cloud have taken off and they've had meteoric success. So Gojek in Indonesia, as an example, we power pretty much their entire platform. Carousel, which is a peer-to-peer online marketplace in Singapore, they run on Google Cloud. We've also been privileged to partner with some of the world's most iconic brands across a lot of different industries to power their digital transformation. And I think it's important to know that because, again, some of us were working for some other clouds, in the past. There was some skepticism regarding our commitment, Google's commitment to the cloud business. But now, there should be absolutely no doubt regarding our commitments to our Google Cloud business, but more importantly, to kind of building out the ecosystem, the infrastructure that we need to make you better developers and to make you more successful. So we're really focused on this business. So to give you an idea, right, some high-level statistics. Building a global cloud takes a little bit of money. So we've been investing along the way. So we've invested almost $30 billion in capital expenditure. All right, so that $30 billion goes into that network that I showed you. So new regions, right? So we want to capitalize on our global scale, right? So we've opened up a bunch of new regions and edge locations as well. In the video, you would have seen Diane Green. So if you don't know who Diane Green is our Chief Executive Officer for Google Cloud. She was the founder of VMware, and she's on the board of Alphabet. So Alphabet is Google's holding company. She was in Singapore with us last June when we opened up our Singapore region. She has taken she's taken interest in Southeast Asia, which is great. She's made a couple of trips here, but she understands the investments that we need to make to continue to build our cloud out. And as a result, we're now serving over 1 billion users. So through applications and services that people have deployed on Google Cloud, we have over 1 billion unique IP addresses through our platform. So it's terrific. And then the last point I would highlight on this is our availability. Again, I talked a little bit about site reliability engineering, SRE, and how we manage our global infrastructure. But there is an organization called Cloud Harmony. Cloud Harmony has recently been bought by Gartner. So if anybody if you work with Gartner, I don't know if there are any Gartner people in the audience, but they make you pay for a lot of stuff. Cloud Harmony takes a look at all of the major clouds, and they measure uptime and performance. And for 2017, we were the highest rated in terms of performance. So we're really focused on reliability. You used to be able to download that report, but again, it's Cloud Harmony. And I'd encourage all of you to take a look at that because it provides additional insights around how clouds are managed and how they perform. And I think that's important for you as developers when you're making informed decisions on where to, which clouds to deploy upon. So these are some of our customers, these are some of our regional customers, and these are some of our global customers. And to kind of give you an idea of the momentum in our business, in the last year alone, we've tripled the number of large customers that we've had. And in Southeast Asia, we've grown our business by about 150%, which is fantastic. In Vietnam, we're really proud, we're really fortunate that we're starting to see new workloads and new customers come onto our platform. So we're privileged that we could be able to partner work with VNG, so we're hosting some of their games. There's a cool company called Centify, which is doing some cool fintech stuff, and they're running on our platform. FunTap and a bunch of others. So we're increasing the number of customers, and again, this is virtually across every industry globally. In parallel, we really need to focus on our ecosystem. We got to focus on our partner ecosystem in order to drive transformation for our customers of all sizes. So we are fortunate that we partner with technology platforms, technology vendors like SAP. We work with Cisco. We work with Pivotal and so forth. But we also work with systems integrators, right? These are the big guys, and these are the regional guys as well. So I'd like to give a shout out to Genesis. I'd like to give a shout out to Quoc-Bao. I know Mario's here. Had a chance to spend last night with some of our partners. And then lastly, we have CloudAce. So CloudAce is supporting this event as well. These are the partners that we would encourage you to work with to learn how they might be able to accelerate the transformation for you, the digital transformation for you, through some of the skills that they have. They have certified Google Cloud consultants and engineers, and they do some pretty amazing stuff with us. So we have to really double down and expand our partner ecosystem. Now, I'm going to spend the last few minutes just giving you an overview of what some people are doing with us, right? So customers of various sizes. So the first one is HSBC, Big Bank. It's the world's third largest. Third largest, Richard? So Richard, from our team, he comes from a banking background, so he's the honest with stuff. HSBC, they've adopted a cloud-first strategy. So they have been engaging with Google Cloud primarily through our solution architects and our professional services organization to help them overcome some challenges related to data. So we built some data models and algorithms for them to help them overcome some of the challenges around anti-money laundering, risk management, financial reporting, and so forth. So we really started with them on data, and now we're actually moving or extending our partnership to include things like developing modern applications or upgrading some of their legacy applications to run in a more modern way, developing new pipelines, accelerating the time it takes for them to deploy software and so forth. What I like about HSBC is that they're a multi-cloud platform. They're working with several clouds, right? But they're really leveraging Google Cloud and the strengths that we have, particularly around data, machine learning, and analytics. So great, it's been a great partnership thus far. Snapchat. Is Snapchat big in Vietnam? People use Snapchat? I'm too old for Snapchat. My 9-year-old uses Snapchat for some reason, but so Snapchat. What's great about this story is that they're running pretty much exclusively on Google App Engine, right? That's our platform as a service. So this kind of gives them the ability to focus more on developing the application experience for their users. We manage everything in the back end, right? So when they scale, they don't have to really focus on how to scale. All the operations are automated, and that allows them to focus more on what they do in terms of improving the end user experience. So those are two kind of global case studies. But again, I mentioned what we're doing with some customers regionally. This is VNG. We're really excited about some of the things that we're doing with VNG. They move some regional game titles over to Google Cloud. We're working with them, and the local team is working with them to launch some additional titles onto Google Cloud. And not just the performance improvements that they see through our network. And again, when you're running on the Google network, you're on our network until the very last point before it reaches the end user. That's different to some of the other clouds. But they're achieving around 30% savings. That's big money. Right? That's big money just because of the economics of how we structure our platform. So we're delighted to work with them. Gojek. So Gojek has been a long-standing Google Cloud customer. What I particularly like about this, you can read the statistics of what they're doing, but what I love about Gojek is that they started out working with us through our startup program. So one of my colleagues, very talented guy named John Fitzpatrick, he was outside in one of the Google booths. He runs our startup program. They started small, they worked with us, and they scaled along the way. So they're a real lighthouse account for us. We're doing more. We've extended our strategic partnership with Gojek, and they are looking to enter additional markets outside of Indonesia. So it's a really exciting time for them, and they can do that, leveraging the Google Cloud platform. The last one is a Thai company called Omise. Omise is a digital wallet. It's a digital payment service, right? So when we talk about the security in the cloud, anything that facilitates payments, generally heightens people's anxiety around security. They moved over to Google Cloud primarily because of the security benefits. It's how we run our cloud, but also the Google Cloud network. But also they've saved a ton of time and engineering efforts by leveraging some of our managed services, right? And not just that, they reduced their kind of latency as well by leveraging Google Cloud. So they're a Thailand-based organization. They're in the news quite a bit right now, given what's happening in Thailand with their digital initiatives. But they're a really fun bunch to work with. So here's my last slide. This is my call to action to all of you, please. I'd firstly like to congratulate all of you for being here today. You're now embarking on your Google Cloud certification, so thank you very much. But I would hope that you all make certification your goal. Right? We have 3 tiers of certification. We've got our Cloud Architect certification, Data Engineer certification, and then for those of you who are more focused on collaboration with our G Suite certification. Again, when I talk to customers, they are so hungry for us to give them certified talent, engineers, developers, and so forth. Project those skills into the market. There's a real demand for certification, and I would encourage all of you to make certification your goal. We've got a bunch of ways that you can get certified and trained. We've got online training. I think you'll get some quick labs credits today as well, but really make certification your goal. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Have a great day ahead, everyone. I will be here. I don't know if I can meet all of you individually, but please enjoy the day. This is a really exciting time for us at Google Cloud. We hope it's an exciting time for you as well. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing. Thanks.
Kể nói công ty bán hết tài sản mua lao xài.
Thông tin đúng không ạ? Tôi đoán rằng với khá nhiều người ở đây, thông tin thú vị nhất là case study của Vinagame. Họ có thể tiết kiệm 30% hoặc là 40% trong mỗi game mà của họ. Nếu mình xem tất cả tầm cơ sở của họ gần giống như thế nào thì mình có thể hiểu nó sẽ tiết kiệm lớn đến mức nào. Mà tôi nghĩ rằng khá nhiều bạn thắc mắc là tại sao mình có thể tiết kiệm ở mức như vậy. Google Cloud sẽ giúp công ty của mình tiết kiệm không chỉ tiết kiệm tiền, tiết kiệm thời gian như là case study của các bạn ở bên Thái Lan. Mỗi tuần thì có thể tiết kiệm 10 tiếng đồng hồ hoặc là 20 tiếng đồng hồ thì của họ. Thì đó là những câu hỏi Franco bắt đầu trả lời cho mọi người. Franco cũng là một người như tôi đã nhắc tới trước, là một người đã gặp gỡ và làm quen với nhiều người ở đây, nhất là trong lĩnh vực game, là leader của Google Cloud ở thị trường Việt Nam. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Franco.
very good morning to everyone. And again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Franco Aisma, and I lead the Google Cloud business for Vietnam. Like everyone in this room, in the past 24 hours, my life has been surrounded by digital technology. I booked my flight through Vietnam Airlines webpage. I've watched YouTube videos. I've looked at Google Maps. I've played music from Spotify, read a few news, checked out some local websites, and like many of you, we consume digital services so easily. And yet we forget that these services did not even exist 10 years ago. In fact, a lot of these digital services would probably not exist if cloud did not happen. Because cloud allowed for the experiments that was needed. It allowed for that low-cost platform for people to try. And my hope is that many years from now, we would find startups, services that would have come out of this room. And that's how I'd like us to frame our discussion today. We're learning about a platform so that we could all build something after this. So I would like to discuss a little bit in detail some of what Tim already covered with you. Because a lot of the services we talked about, we don't even know how it runs, where it runs, how it's built. We're going to peel back the curtains and understand a few things. We're going to try and understand what's inside the infrastructure or the data center, what makes it different. We're going to look at some of the things that make pricing effective for Google Cloud. We'll look at how we're supporting the open source community. And we'll wrap everything up so that we could move on with the next sessions. Sounds good? So I started my career as an engineer, and more than 15 years ago, the most exciting thing that could happen for an engineer is to receive a shipment of servers. I was very excited. I would get about a dozen servers, 20 servers, and they smell great. They come in great boxes. It comes in packets of CDs, and I would spend days putting the CDs, booting them up, putting the operating system. And I loved this. It was really fun until the day that we needed to deploy a big project and 100 servers came. And it became a complete nightmare for me. I remember those days vividly because I spent my time inside data centers, putting all these together. And one day, I came across a new technology called virtualization. And I was completely amazed of what I could do. I can take a snapshot of what I've built on a server, redeploy it multiple times, and it saved me so much effort and time. So we've gone through the world of buying infrastructure before we can even get our work started. I've gone through a phase of virtualization, and I started my cloud journey with the same excitement, seeing what is possible. Now, about 10 years ago, Google was already using virtualization technology, but even that was not enough to support the 7 billion user services that we had and were serving globally. We had to move on past the infrastructure. We started using containers. So every service that you are consuming in Google today are running on containers. And we believe that this is going to be the future where a lot of us today in this room develop the application, develop the code, and a lot of the infrastructure decisions will be managed intelligently. As Tim mentioned, Google believes that and would love to help each and every one of you and your organization to use data. We believe that the next phase of growth for companies will be data-driven. And this is our mission, to enable and empower you to make use of that data. So let's get started. We talked a little bit about the evolution of the infrastructure itself, coming from an infrastructure as a service, moving on to some kind of platform as a service where there's going to be a hybrid layer. And then as we move along, you can see there's a lot more intelligence that are happening. When we are consuming services as APIs, we're consuming services without really knowing what's happening on the back end, and relying on it functioning reliably. One of the things that is missed often, but very important in cloud infrastructure, is the highways that connect that infrastructure. We could have the fastest car, the fastest Ducati motorbike here in Ho Chi Minh City, but if you do not have the highways to connect that all that speed and performance is really useless. And one of the things that Google has been investing in heavily for the past few decades is exactly that highways of connectivity. Publicly available data says that Google serves as much as 40% of the world's internet traffic. We have our own fiber backbones that connect our data centers. When your request or your packets enter into a Google network, it stays within that network. That is why the performance, that's why we're seeing a lot of performance gains from customers who are running on the platform. Now, globally, there's hundreds and thousands of cache locations that are everywhere. So when you watch YouTube, you use Gmail, a lot of those cache locations are already nearby. There's also hundreds of points of presence that allow you to get closer to your customers. So think of that highway as a very important backbone that is there. It's unseen. It becomes important when you are serving a global audience. It becomes important when you're trying to lower down the time, the latency it takes for your applications to speak to each other. Let's look at the actual infrastructure. We have a concept of regions in Google. And you can think of regions as specific geographies where a lot of different services are running, right? And we have 15 regions right now, and we're continuing to expand. Inside those regions, you can think of zones as being part of a region. There can be 2 or more zones in a region. Now, why is that important? If I'm an application developer, I need to know where my users are. Now, sometimes the most sensible region is not the one that is closest to you. There's a lot of tools that are available out there. You should really test the internet proximity of regions rather than the distance proximity, because sometimes internet traffic behaves very randomly. Sometimes internet traffic behaves unpredictably, and you really need to understand which is the closest regions that can serve your users where they are. So I would suggest using open source tools to check those out. As a developer, I would select the regions that make sense for my customers and the one that is closest to them. Coming back to the zones, if I'm developing an application, I want to make sure that when technology fails, it often does, I am able to recover very quickly from that, and that I'm not affected by a single zone outage, right? So it's important to design for failure, to design for fault tolerance. It's also important, if I'm a major business, to have perhaps a DR, or a disaster recovery system, even across a different zone, or a different region as a risk mitigation. So all these things you need to consider even before you start looking at the service itself. Where do I host my application? Is it going to be within one zone? Is it going to be one region? Which region is closest to my customer? Is it going to be across multiple regions so that I have a backup? One of the things that we also do at Google, and we pride ourselves, is that we realize that as digital technology grows rapidly, a lot of these consume electricity. In fact, the estimates say that the global data centers are consuming more than 2% of electricity worldwide. You and I use and will continue to use more services. So it's important for us to think of how we can sustain this and minimize the environmental impact of what we're doing. And we're proud to say that we've been carbon neutral since 2007. We're striving to be 100% renewable very soon. And this is a picture of our Finland data center, which is very innovative and unique because it uses seawater to cool down the data center. So as we all grow, we need to think about the impact that we leave as well, so that we could sustain that growth and make sure that there's a lot of headroom for us to be able to develop. Now, one of the things I talked about that we'll touch is the commercial innovation of Google Cloud. Now, Tim mentioned VNG a while ago, and one of the things that we do differently is, we pioneered the use of sub-hour billing. It means that when you spin up a VM, you get charged not in chunks of time, but the actual seconds that you use that particular VM. Right? Why is that important? Well, if I'm launching a game title, I'm launching an application, and I do not know exactly how many users will be using this application, I cannot make an investment to say, I want to pre-purchase 100 VMs. What if nobody actually goes to my site? So one of the things that we allow and we've incorporated into the platform is that as long as we use it more and more, we apply the discounts immediately. So that is something that we call sustained use discounts, where as a customer, as a developer, as a company, the more you use the platform, the discounts would automatically be applied for that specific usage. So that cuts the guessing game in terms of how much do I need to invest in. So the third piece is something that was also touched upon. When you typically buy a Happy Meal, a car, it comes with a preset combination of engine, transmission. This is how it looks. One of the things that we've pioneered is that we allow you as developers to pick and choose the number of CPUs that make sense for the load that you're running. And you cannot get this right the first time. You need to benchmark. You need to run your application first and see how much resources it's using, and then right size. You can have odd combinations of maybe X amount of CPU, this much amount of RAM, this amount of RAM, large amounts of CPU for rendering. It really depends on the workload, and you recognize that every use case, every developer has a unique requirement. That is why we have those abilities to customize and tailor what they use on the platform. The other thing that we talked about in Google is that we are huge supporters of open source. We have been doing this for decades. We publish findings and we publish our technology out because we believe that is the way forward for a lot of us to progress. So some examples of those open source technologies that was mentioned, especially important ones, TensorFlow is an open source library that is becoming a de facto in terms of machine learning model creation. A lot of the services that we use have open connectivity and APIs. We publish a lot of how you can mix and match a lot of the different services from Google. And we want to keep it open so that you as developers have the most flexibility, you as the companies have the most flexibility in designing what makes sense for the organization. We also would like to highlight security as an important aspect because a lot of these developments are fantastic, but we could be set back with one security breach and we'll be back to square one. Security is a focus for us and something that Google strives to continually improve, and it starts from the lower levels of security, meaning from the design of the data centers. We design and build our own data centers and own and operate them. We design and have manufactured our own hardware and make sure that those hardwares, when they wake up, they actually use the right kind of softwares. There are encryption chips that are embedded in those hardwares to make sure that every communication from one device to another is secure. We have multi-factor authentications for Googlers who need to have access to these informations. So you can see that we start from the very low levels of security all the way up to the operational layers of security, because it's something that we need to make sure that we get right. We work with 7 billion customers out there, and it's something that we'll continue to improve on. So when you run on the platform, it doesn't mean that you're completely secured. I get asked quite frequently by developers and engineers saying that when I move to a Google Cloud platform, am I compliant now? The answer is maybe. You've improved your chances by 50%, but it's also a shared responsibility. If the architecture was bad to begin with, even if you move it to Google Cloud, infrastructure or a supercomputer, the architecture would always be bad. So it's a shared responsibility which we take a portion of that and make sure that it is compliant to a certain degree. And by working with every one of you, we make sure that we build more secure applications and services. So let's look at some of the reasons why a lot of different companies are really beginning to try the platform and really take huge leaps into investing their digital future with us. A lot of companies, as Tim mentioned, not just globally but in the region, are starting to make those investments because of their ability to build, test, deploy, reduce the risk of trying out new ideas, and the ability to scale. And maybe when you start out a business, scale is not something that is important to you. But I meet a lot of startups that once they hit that scale, the one chance of proving themselves to their consumers and users, and when they're not built and architected for that, they've lost the ticket to becoming the next big service. It's important to think of scale from day one. It's important to be built on a secure platform from day one. It's important to know that you have the flexibility to move from one cloud provider to another, to move from one technology stack to another. And these are the values that we hold in Google Cloud. So let's recap some of the major services that we have. At the heart of it, it's comprised of compute. Compute comes in many forms, right? So if we think of cloud and taking out the curtains behind, there are data centers, there are servers that are running. The major ingredient of it is compute. It comes in the form of compute engine, which is really your bare bones compute engine that you run and put your applications on. Then you move on to many different kinds of somewhere between platform as a service. You have your app engine, where you simply need to deploy the code and it would automatically provision the infrastructure. You have functions, where you just call a function and it gives you back the result. Or an application or a portion of your code will call several functions to resolve itself. So that's on the compute side. On the storage piece, there's a number. If you can think of storage as not merely the disk that we have, there are forms of storage that are fitted to put in massive amounts of information as one file size. There are storage options that are better suited to keeping multiple fragmented files. There are storage that allows you to be able to share across applications, to share across different users. There's a lot to choose from, which we will go through. And to some degree, databases are part of storage, if you look at it from that perspective. And some of the most exciting things that we get consulted on quite frequently because of our strengths at Google, is big data and machine learning. So this is the exciting stuff that we would cover in detail. So we start on the right side from the BigQuery system, which is unique to Google. Basically a data warehouse solution that allows you to scale horizontally. You have their PubSub, which is a messaging system that you can use so that your applications can talk to each other. You have data flow, which you get the data, you need to massage this data so that you can gather insights. And there's manage Hadoop clusters and many other different kinds of tools so that you are able to extract insights from massive amounts of data. And of course, on the right side is the machine learning piece, which is very, very interesting indeed. Now, one rule that I came across in many different decks that I've seen at Google is the first rule of machine learning is try not to make a model unless you really have to, because it's difficult. It takes expertise. You need some sort of data science practice within your organization. You need a data engineer to wrangle information to make sense of that data. You need a domain expert to understand what is it that we're trying to get out of this model. So there's two approaches to machine learning in our view. One is there are organizations that would require custom models and they have to build it. They have the capabilities to do so, and that's fine. Those you build, those you customize. There's another part of machine learning that's far easier and accessible for most. And those are machine learning APIs that Google has trained. These comes in the form of speech. So you can try these out right now. You just call an API and then it will translate what you're saying into written form. There's natural language processing. There's video intelligence API. And there's a whole lot of others. These kinds of APIs will probably get you closer to 80% of what you're trying to do. But by combining these different APIs, you're actually doing machine learning without realizing it, because those are pre-trained machine learning models that Google has trained across millions of data sets that you would not have to do by yourself. On the other route, if you still have to create your own model, of course, TensorFlow is available, AutoCloud ML, as Tim mentioned, are also available options, which we'll touch towards the end of this training. So let's take a quiz. I know there was a lot of information and I want to make sure that you guys capture it, because this is what I call behind the curtains of cloud, right? So we touched through the infrastructure, that highways are an important part of cloud, and we invest heavily in those. The regions, the zones, the differences of that, how you would distribute your applications is important. Google's commitment into the open source community and making sure that everything is open and accessible and everyone knows and can contribute to these movements. Security, which touched upon a little bit, we touched on pricing innovation as well. So, name some of the Google Cloud Platform pricing innovations. I know you guys can't answer, so I'll answer my own questions because there's no microphones in there. So we have some billing, per second billing on some of the compute resources that we have. So meaning that you get charged only for the amount of time that these are actually running. You have the sustained use discounts, which are fantastic if you do not know if your game title or your applications will be a hit, because you don't have to commit upfront, as we've seen with the VNG use case. We allow you to tailor the kinds of compute engine that needs to run your application. Not a prepackaged Toyota, not a prepackaged Mazda, but something that is customized to what your application needs. So some of the benefits as well, beyond pricing, beyond the technology that we've seen, Google's commitment for green technologies and pursuing that is something that is important for us, as we know the digital ecosystems would only continue to grow. As you've seen, if you are building an application and you want to demonstrate your support for the same mission, you know, it would be good to run on the platform because you're helping that cause. And the other commitments that we have as a company as well, in the open source world, the robust infrastructure, and the amount of investments that we're continuing to do, not just on technology, but also on people. So maybe, I'm not sure if you would have recalled, when is the last time that you have met a Googler on the cloud side of things? When is the last time you have attended a conference like this on Google Cloud? So we're not only investing in the technology, we're investing in each and every one of you to be connected, to meet us, to try and work with you in solving problems. And you can only expect more of these kinds of sessions from us. So with that, thank you very much. I'll hand it over back to Joe.
Cảm ơn Frank rất là nhiều. Vừa rồi thì mình đã có hơn 100 người xin vào Facebook group của mình là Google Cloud VN. Nếu các bạn chưa kịp xin vào thì bạn chỉ cần search Google Cloud VN.
Mình chỉ cần dừng nói lại là em xin vô được.
Mình sẽ approve và mình sẽ giới thiệu rất nhiều thông tin thú vị trong cái group đó. Vừa rồi Franco cũng nhắc tới machine learning, những API của Google rồi vân vân. Có một câu hỏi rất là quen thuộc về team cloud của mình. Google Cloud nó khác với những dịch vụ cloud đối thủ cạnh tranh của mình như thế nào, và một câu trả lời rất quan trọng là khả năng hiểu tiếng Việt của Google. Chỉ có mỗi Google Cloud mới thực sự hiểu tiếng Việt. Nếu các bạn sử dụng cái speech API, tức là mình có cái speech to text, có thể thu âm, kể cả đó là giọng miền Trung, miền Nam, miền Bắc, ở đâu, kể cả người nước ngoài dùng tiếng Việt thì Google cũng hiểu. Và cái application thì cũng vô cùng nhiều. Vừa rồi tôi cũng làm với một công ty FMCG sản xuất miên liền một số sản phẩm khác. Thì thông thường là nếu mà họ muốn biết là đối thủ cạnh tranh của họ quảng cáo ở trên truyền hình bao nhiêu lần thì họ phải mua lại dữ liệu đó rất là đắt tiền. Tuy nhiên với Google Cloud thì họ có thể set up một camera, có như là set up một camera để xem truyền hình, họ lấy cái TV feed, họ thu âm lại tất cả kênh truyền hình lớn VTV1, VTV3, VTV7 rồi vân vân, thu âm hết, điền tất cả những quảng cáo của tất cả đơn vị quảng cáo trên truyền hình thành text, và cũng phân tích image nữa. Họ cũng dùng cái machine learning model để đào tạo, bởi vì Google có sẵn rất nhiều image trong cái database của mình. Nó có thể nhận ra mình upload một cái ảnh, một video thì có thể nhận ra đó là con trai, con gái, đôi giày rồi vân vân. Có một số cái mà Google chưa nhận ra, ví dụ miên liền của công ty A, miên liền của công ty B, cái gói miên liền khác nhau như thế nào Google chưa nhận ra, thì mình có thể dùng cái machine learning auto training để đào tạo cho Google để Google có thể hiểu được đây là sản phẩm của mình, còn đó là sản phẩm của cạnh tranh. Vậy thì những cái mà Frank vừa chia sẻ cũng không chỉ là lý thuyết mà có rất nhiều application cũng khá là thực dụng trong thị trường Việt Nam, có thể tiết kiệm cho các ngành Việt Nam khá là nhiều tiền. Tiếp tục mình sẽ đi rất là sâu vào việc set up và triển khai Google Cloud Platform. Vậy là đến bây giờ một số bạn cảm thấy là thuyết phục là ok, tôi cũng cảm thấy tò mò muốn biết thêm về Google Cloud. Thế nhưng mà bắt đầu như thế nào? Nếu đã mở account thì sẽ có những function nào, và mình rất may mắn được có sự có mặt của Theo. There's your slide. Theo là trainer of Google, and he's going to run through everything in the next module. So Theo, our teacher.
For me to be here. And so I'm a Theo lover, and I'm a Google Cloud instructor. I am based in Singapore, and normally my classroom are much smaller. It's usually 30 people max, and we deep dive all together. We can spend a couple of days on the cloud platform, learning to do various things on the cloud. So yeah, for me it's quite impressive to have such a big room. So let's get started this training. But before we do, I would like to give you a little bit of the background on my side. So I started actually at Google in 2007. I'm not that old, but it's been a while, 11 years at Google. And back in 2007, when I was an intern in that company, I actually worked on Gmail. So who uses Gmail here? Right? Tons and tons of people. So actually I like to think there is a tiny piece of code, maybe that is still used maybe today. That's what I like to think. So yes, that was my first project, and I thought that was very, very interesting. But when I finished university, started to work full-time at Google, then I moved to another project because I was part of corporate engineering, which is basically looking after infrastructure, computers of Googlers, making sure they have the best equipment. And basically my project, when I started again, was to move all Googlers to the cloud, so including Gmail, Google Drive, Docs, etc., etc. So by 2008, so that was 10 years ago, Google was completely running on the cloud. And that was actually quite an achievement if you think about it. That was 10 years ago, where we didn't even have iPhones, right? We didn't have like Android. There was no Google Chrome. So there is a lot of familiar technologies, if you think about that, we didn't have. And a lot of cloud applications that are so popular today that you guys use, you know, there might be some people here in the room already, you know, using, you know, maybe Salesforce, maybe AWS, maybe cloud platform. Now it's, you know, becoming very common. But like 10 years ago, think about it. Anyways, yeah, it has changed like a lot. So, yeah, I'm based in Singapore. You guys are welcome to add me on LinkedIn or on our Facebook group, like we were showing before. And yeah, before I was based in London, where I spent a lot of years there. And as you guys might see from my accent, I'm actually French. And you see, 10 years in England didn't get rid of this for me, unfortunately. It's very, very hard. All right, shall we get started? Yeah? Okay, let's do it. Okay, so now what we want to do is basically get started with cloud platform. So I know there is a lot in the agenda, but today you're going to get a big overview of most of the product. There is, however, some parts where we are not able to deep dive, right? Because you know some courses can be actually 3 to 5 days long, depending on what you're interested in. But we're going to focus on infrastructure, on cloud platform. So, you know, do people like memes? Do you know memes on internet? You know, cat pictures and then you put like a funny comment or a text. So at Google we love memes. And so we do it a lot to make fun of ourselves, to make fun of plenty of things. And sometimes it's very funny because there are some bugs, you know, in software. And that was not that long ago. I go to my Google Cloud Platform console and I want to create a project. And it tell me, oh, you have, you know, 9 zillions of projects remaining in your code. So we made a meme from that, and I said, okay, challenge accepted. So that's a lot of memes, basically. All right. So everything in Google Cloud Platform starts by creating a project. So we're going to deep dive a little bit into that. A project is basically created where you are going to assign resources to it, so you can put virtual machines, you will put your networking, you might put some cloud storage buckets, you might put a couple of elements. So you can imagine to create a project for your application, but maybe you want to create a project for a backend, you want to create another project, maybe for a front end. You are free to do pretty much whatever you want. That really depends how you would like to architecture your infrastructure on the cloud or your application. Okay, so at the root of it, you have what we call the organization. Usually your company name, right? So in our case at Google, it's google.com, but if you have like another company like Viettel, you know, viettel.com, and you basically create a couple of projects under. That's basically how it works. So you can create as many projects, obviously, that you would like. But the projects, as I was saying, are very important to organize resources and combine them together. Inside the project, you will have what we call a billing account. And that's important because this is basically how you are going maybe to set up maybe your credit card if you use it. Or maybe most of the time, when you are a big company, you probably have like a purchase order that is associated you know, with it, maybe a bank account. You can manage permission and credentials, because maybe you will have multiple projects as well. And so that's actually quite important to put in place. You can enable services and APIs that you want to use. So Franco was mentioning some applications that might be using some machine learning APIs. And usually the way it will work, you will just create a project, you will enable the right APIs that you want to use. Maybe you want to use BigQuery, maybe you want to use some speech API, maybe vision API. You just select all those, and then you can start to create your resources, etc. So don't worry, I'm going to show you how it looks. So I'm going to do a couple of demos anyway today. When you create a project, it must have a unique name. So it should not have been taken by someone else. And when you will create it, you will get a project number. You are going to get a project ID as well. And the way you can interact with your newly created project is to use the Cloud Console. So what is a Cloud Console? It's basically the UI that is available to you. Of course, you are welcome to use the UI, but Google is a very engineering company. So you will see that we have a lot of things on the background that helps you to use the UX if you want. But you can automatically get the equivalent of what you are doing when you're doing your clicks into a command line. And I will show you that tip, because this is really, really good. Because UX are always a little bit easier to use. Obviously, we also have a big set of APIs that are available. So you can basically create your own dashboard. You can basically do a lot of different things. So now is going to be my very first demo. And what I want to do is create a new project. So let me show you how it works. So hopefully our computer is happy. Okay, so hopefully you guys will see my screen in a second. And it's good because I will be able to show you a little bit what the Google Cloud Platform Console looks like. So who has used the Google Cloud Platform Console before? Perfect. There are not many people. That's good. That's exactly why you're here. If you're an expert already, I would say, yes, that's cool. Because you can come, you can meet us, etc. But it's always amazing, to have people that are not familiar with it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be going to those events. So, when you're opening your console, basically you just type console.cloud.google.com. Inside, you have a drop-down button that is helping you to select the project of your choice. But if you do want to, you can also obviously create a new one just by clicking here. So plus, I'm going to create my new project here. Call it Cyber 2018. It's available, and it gives me even like a project ID that is going to be created. And I have 497 projects remaining in my quota. Okay, that's better than the big number you saw earlier on. And that's it. So my project is being created, and actually if you are going there, you are able basically to see what is being done in progress. Usually it takes a couple of seconds to do. But in my case, I already have a project that I call Train the Trainer. So what do I have here? First of all, I have a dashboard. It tells me about a lot of different things. I have some news, I have the billing. Oh my God, I need to turn off some service. That's a lot of money. Compute engine, I can basically see that I'm using a certain amount of things on BigQuery, on cloud storage, etc., etc. So that's basically my dashboard. I can customize it as well. So we do have actually quite a very nice and easy dashboard to use, where you can basically add charts, etc., etc. You also get an activity monitor that is going to show what are the different activities happening inside your project. There is also something else that I want to show. It's what we call the Google Cloud Shell. So when you are clicking on that button here, you can activate the Google Cloud Shell. I'm going to talk in more detail about it, but it's really good. Because it's basically a machine that is provided inside your browser. You don't need to install any extension. You don't need to download any SDK. You have nothing to do. As soon as you have Google Chrome, it runs anywhere. And you can run Linux commands, API calls, whatever basically you have in mind. And so let's have a look if my project has been created. Oh, here we go. Cygate 2018. And that's pretty much it. Perfect. So from this point, if you look at the hamburger menu, you can see the different services that Google has available. We'll cover them in more detail, of course, but you can create virtual machine. You can enable billing, you can manage users, etc., etc. So there are a couple of cool things that we can do. Okay, so now going back to our slide. So you see, it's pretty easy basically to do that. You can also use, obviously, the different command line that we have. But now, something very important. And I know it's not the most amusing topic to talk about. It's identity and access management. Because it's extremely important to know who can do what on what resource, right? Because at the end of the day, that's an analogy I always say to people. When you are moving to a cloud provider, do not forget, it is your data center in the cloud. So, you have people with different permissions, different roles. Do not forget that you need to customize those things. But you also need to organize your projects in such a way that it's a little bit similar to what you do on your own data center, such as putting labels on machines, right? What does this machine do? Who has access to what? If I have, let's say, a sysops, what is he able basically to do? If I have a data engineer, what is she able to execute? So all those things. This is very, very important. Starting with permissions on Google Cloud, it's actually pretty easy. There are 3 different types of roles. The first one is what we call a primitive role. It is very similar to Linux permissions. So it's basically who can be an owner, who can be an editor, who can be a viewer. But those roles, sometimes, depending on what you want to do, might be a bit too basic. Okay? Maybe, instead, you want to use what we call a predefined role, which is who can execute virtual machines, who can maybe use Google Cloud Storage, who can maybe run some queries on BigQuery, who can use machine learning, etc. Better, you can even use what we call custom roles, which is a collection of roles that you can really customize. And you can basically really customize those roles to what basically you do with your very own team, right? So for example, if I have a developer, I can only give them access to what they need. What are the different services that they should have access to? So we'll be talking about that. Primitive roles, pretty simple. We don't need to go into much detail here, but like I said, understand like Linux permission. But those roles are much more wide, right? If you are a project owner, you will have, of course, access to everything under the project. You will be able to invite members, you're going to be able to remove members, you can delete projects, you can do a lot of things, right? Of course, it might make sense to have people that have such roles. But most of the time, you will want to be using what we call the predefined roles, and you can really select the permission that you really want. Those are all documented in our Help Center, and of course, we have hundreds of those roles because we have so many services. This is just an example, by the way. Okay? And then, of course, in our case here, you can see it's a little bit like virtual machines, so what we call Google Compute Engine. And as you can see, you have a collection of roles such as, if you are an instance administrator, you can delete a machine, you can get the name of a machine, you can get a list of those. And you can start them, you can stop them, you can do a lot of different cool things. Custom roles, that is what I was describing before. It is creating roles that are so specific because you can add the different services that you want to use, but instead of using, for example, all those permissions here that we have by default, you can really customize it. And guess what? You don't only need to be using, in that case, Compute Engine, like virtual machines roles. You can also add on top cloud storage roles, BigQuery roles. So in my case, I could be maybe an instance administrator. I can administrate a virtual machine. But maybe on Google BigQuery, I can only be let's say a few words. And something that is very simple on Google, maybe comparing to alternative cloud provider, is actually managing those permissions. We have a very easy way to do it, and I will show you on the next one. Something else that I want to highlight is what we call a service account. So service account, many of you might already be familiar with this concept, maybe on Linux. You know, for example, when you use a root account on Linux, behind the scenes, it's not really a user, right? It's a root user that you have that is able to execute a certain set of permission on the Linux system. You might be familiar with those already if you are using, other systems. But basically, the service account is a server-to-server account. Because you don't want, in order to execute a certain action, to be using your own account, right? Imagine in order to run a big query script, I need to use my username and my password. That doesn't work. You need to have basically a service account. So a service account, it can be used to authenticate from one service to the other. It can also be used to control the privileges. What a service account is able to do. Okay? A way to identify those are to look at the address that they are ended up with. They are always with developer.gserviceaccount.com. You will always see this type of roles. And I will show you. So how do service account works with identity and access management? Well, it's actually pretty simple. First of all, you authenticate using what we call a key. So it's a bit like a private and a public key to execute actions. Google, by default, manages the keys for you, but of course, if you want to use your own key management system, KMS, I'm sure some people are quite familiar with those in the room, you are welcome, of course, to use it. You can also use our new service, because we now have a Google Key Management Service. This is quite new.